We have about a $200 billion deficit with Canada, getting close to $200 billion. They've treated us very unfairly.
Last time we talked tariffs through an Alberta lens, nearly 30 days ago, we heard from industry and analysts to brace for a rise in unemployment and a shrinking GDP, housing costs going through the roof, and immediate impacts on manufacturing, agriculture, and petrochemical sectors. And now?
No, I don't think anything's really changed. I think a lot of people kind of assumed that we're going to get hit with something at some point.
President Trump has been all over the place. It is hard to figure out a thought pattern here.
Trump agreed to pause his tariff plans until March 4th after Canada made some key commitments on border security. Then this happened.
We're on time with the tariffs, and it seems like that's moving along very rapidly.
The next day, the White House clarified President Trump was talking about a different tariff plan, not the 25% economy-wide tariff and the 10% oil tariff Trump has threatened against Canada and Mexico. That, the White House says, is still being determined pending negotiations. Then Trump posts on social media. He says drugs are still pouring into the U.S. from Mexico and Canada, and until that stops or is seriously limited, proposed tariffs for March 4th are going into effect as scheduled. What's next is anyone's guess. So how can Alberta businesses and industry plan for this moving target and moving deadline?
Canadians are going to have to sleep with one eye open for 4 years. We're just at the start of this ride, and it's looking like it's going to be a bumpy one.
For farmers in the cattle industry and those who grow things like canola, uncertainty is kind of the norm. After all, they have a business model that is at the whim of the weather. Weathering this added uncertainty, there's no old farmer's almanac to help predict what might come next.
Should I sell or shouldn't I sell? Or have I sold enough? Should I have all my fertilizer bought? Not only is it the insecurity of not knowing if tariffs are going to be what tariffs are going to do, but it's also the counter tariffs. And those are going to affect agriculture like everybody else.
It's hard to manage some of the animals that'll be ready in the next day and the next week and the next month, especially with the uncertainty of what is going to unfold. How aggressive do you get on a maybe? And on a what level? So people have taken steps, but it's sure difficult to decide how far you should go.
Trump's tariff threats have driven conversations about how to protect Canadian industries, whether that's finding other markets to sell to or buy from overseas, or opening up provincial trade barriers. Some things that can be done to prepare for tariffs aren't exactly easy. Take the development sector, building houses.
Where through the supply chain, you're not going to have materials tariffed multiple times, much like you'd see in the automobile sector. So there's really few things it does not touch.
Switching those supply chains, how difficult is that?
I mean, then you're getting into Canadian border security. You're looking at port capacity where they're bringing in products from, and then, as I mentioned, CSA standards, which almost any product we import from another jurisdiction or even made within Canada, it has a little CSA symbol on it. All those products coming from other markets that we haven't traditionally been importing, we're now going to have to get certified. And that's not an easy process to go through. And I'm not saying it should be, but we're going to have to figure out how to expedite some of those approvals pretty quickly.
For some companies, there's another approach that could shield them from the threat of a tariff war.
For some businesses, it might be that they need to expand or grow in the United States to make sure that they're on the other side of the tariff wall. And even for Canadian businesses that have operations in more than one country, does that mean that any growth is going to happen in the U.S. market rather than in Canada?
Industry and experts suggest even the uncertainty playing out over the last 30-day grace period has had an economic consequence.
It's just, again, increased uncertainty that is not positive for most businesses and consumers. My view is becoming more and more that it might be the new reality that we'll have constant rolling threat of tariffs, which in some ways, when you start thinking about it, probably accomplish some of its agenda without necessarily having to impose higher costs on U.S. consumers.
So while tariff threats continue to loom, Alberta's industries are telling us the Trump administration's lack of clarity could have its own set of consequences. Helen Pike, CBC News, Calgary.